Visions of the Spiritual World by Sadhu Sundar Singh, dated 1926. Chapter 2. What happens at death? One day when I was praying alone, I suddenly found myself surrounded by a great concourse of spirit beings, or I might say that as soon as my spiritual eyes were opened, I found myself bowed in the presence of a considerable company of saints and angels. At first, I was somewhat abased when I saw their bright and glorious state and compared with them my own inferior quality. But I was at once put at ease by their real sympathy and love-inspired friendliness. I had already had the experience of the peace of the presence of God in my life, but the fellowship of these saints added a new and wonderful joy to me as we conversed together. I received from them answers to my questions relating to my difficulties about many problems that puzzled me. My first inquiry was about what happens at the time of dying and about the state of the soul after death. I said, quote, "We know what happens to us between childhood and old age, but we know nothing of what happens at the time of death or beyond the gates of death. Correct information about it can be known only by those on the other side of death, but they have entered the spiritual world. Can you," I asked, "give us any information about this?" Unquote. To this one of the saints answered, "Death is like sleep. There is no pain in the passing over, except in the case of a few bodily diseases and mental conditions. As an exhausted man is overcome by deep sleep, so comes the sleep of death to man. Death comes so suddenly to many that it is only with great difficulty that they realize that they have left the material world and entered this world of spirits. Bewildered by the many new and beautiful things that they see around them, they imagine that they are visiting some country or city of the physical world which they have not seen before. It is only when they have been more fully instructed and realize that their spiritual body is different from their former material body that they allow that they have, in fact, been transferred from the material world to the realm of spirits." Another of the saints who was present gave this further answer to my question. "Usually," he said, "at the time of death the body gradually loses its power of feeling. It has no pain, but is simply overcome by a sense of drowsiness. Sometimes in the cases of great weakness or after accident, the spirit departs the body is still unconscious. Then the spirits of those who have lived without thought of or preparation for entering the spiritual world, being thus suddenly transferred into the world of spirits, are extremely bewildered and in a state of great distress at their fate. So, for a considerable period, they have to remain in the lower and darker planes of the intermediate state. The spirits of these lower spheres often greatly harass people in the world, but the only ones that they can injure are those who are like in mind to themselves, who of their own free will open their hearts to entertain them. These evil spirits, by allying themselves with other evil spirits, will do immense harm to the world were it not that God has appointed innumerable angels everywhere for the protection of his people and of his creation, so that his people are always safe in his keeping. Evil spirits can injure only those in the world who are like in nature to themselves, and then they can do it only to a limited extent. They can indeed trouble the righteous, but not without God's permission. God sometimes does give to Satan and his angels permission to tempt and persecute his people, that they may emerge from the trial stronger and better, as when he allowed Satan to persecute his servant Job. But from such a trial there is gain rather than loss to the believer. Another of the saints standing by added in reply to my question, "Many whose lives have not been yielded to God, when about to die, seem to become unconscious. But what actually happens is that when they see the hideous and devilish faces of the evil spirits they have come about them, they become speechless and paralyzed by fear. On the other hand, the dying of a believer is frequently the very opposite of this. He is often extremely happy, for he sees angels and saintly spirits coming to welcome him. Then, too, his loved ones who have died before are permitted to attend his deathbed and to conduct his soul to the spiritual world. On entering the world of spirits, he at once feels at home, for not only are his friends about him, but while in the world he had long been preparing himself for that home by his trust in God and fellowship with him. After that, a fourth saint said, to conduct the souls of men from the world is the work of angels. Usually the Christ reveals himself in the spiritual world to each one in degrees of glory differing in intensity according to the state of each soul's spiritual development. But in some cases he himself comes to a deathbed to welcome his servant, and in love dries his tears and leads him into paradise. As a child born into the world finds everything provided for its wants, so does the soul, on entering the spiritual world, find all its wants supplied. End of chapter 2, having been read by Peter John Paresis.